and welcome to what would normally be another Those Crazy Games vlog. And, well, I'm messing with the format again, go figure. This is the first installment of, as you probably saw in the introduction there, the Those Crazy Games book club. In kind of noting that I was going to be covering books and the like, I kind of realized that I'm going to get to those when I get to them, and trying to keep to those with as solid a schedule as I'm trying to keep with the media and game episodes would be a little bit tough, because some of these books are tougher to read than others. But over the last couple of weeks, I got out the copy which I received from Ken Fouché, formerly of the screenplay segment from All Games Considered, Mazes and Monsters. And I started reading that recently, and it's actually, if you come to it from the movie like I did, you look at the movie and you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. The book, of course, puts a lot more flesh on the bones of the movie. And it's an interesting read. It's a good book, I'll say that. It's based loosely on the Egbert disappearance, or at least the media coverage that was going on of that in the late 70s. The book was written in 81, I'm wanting to say, and it has references that date it as much as there are things in the movie that date it. This has more than just the World Trade Center in it. This has references to the Iranian hostages from the late 70s. It's got references to Fernwood Tonight, a television show that my dad introduced me to. Hilarious show with Martin Mull doing a talk show kind of thing. It was a spin-off itself of some of Mary Hartman, I think. But that's getting a bit off the trail here. There's a couple of other things that I remember really striking me as being very much of its time. There's smoking everywhere. And that didn't show up in the movie as much. But let's see. What can I say about this? A lot of it's going to be in comparison with the movie, obviously, because that's where most people are going to be familiar with it. I don't know that this is readily in print, as it were. It's not on Kindle, so I don't know where Ken found it. I imagine you'd be looking through your used bookstores and thrift shops and that kind of thing if you're going to try to find a copy of it. And it had the reputation of being a bit of anti-D&D investigative reporting, when it's nothing of the sort. Rona Jaffe has been writing novels since, well, she had been writing novels since the 1950s. Okay, I looked this up on Wikipedia before getting into this, and I'm wanting to say 1958. Now, she did write some cultural articles for Cosmopolitan in the late 60s, so that could be kind of where they got into the whole journalism thing with this. But really, she based it, like I said, on the Dallas Egbert disappearance in the late 70s, or at least the coverage thereof that really sensationalized things and really took the Dungeons and Dragons angle to it. And one thing that you do get in the book is a lot more background material on the main four characters. Kate, Robbie, JJ, and I've forgotten the one guy's name. The one who was the maze controller. Daniel. There we go. The guy who was the maze controller at first, when you saw those first game sessions with all of them together there. And the movie, you have some evident misconceptions about how gaming worked then. Like, they seemed to think that the players had levels and that, whereas she seemed to get that much of it right. And the first game session in here felt very much like, I know these people, so I can understand. You had JJ who was wanting to who was fooling around and that until he really got into the session and goes into his mentality about that, and it's like, yeah, I know these people. So for those bits, it really is, it's very real. And each of the characters has some background. Most of I think Daniel is the only one who's really in any kind of decent shape, had a decent family life. Kate had pressures from her family. She had divorced parents. In the book, she had been attacked in the darkened laundry room of her dorm the prior year. That plays into some trust issues and fear of the dark, which comes into some of the when they go into the caverns later on. And JJ, of course, had divorced parents and a mom who was always interfering with how his room was decorated, for example, like in the movie. And being a young prodigy, couldn't really identify with what his parents wanted him to be. And then sort of if there's any issues that Daniel had, that's kind of in there too, but they're very good about it, they're like, they're more accepting than some of the others maybe. And of course Robbie, the Tom Hanks character from the movie, you get an idea of his family's issues early on, and since his are central to it, of course those come out in the movie, the thing with his brother Hall running away, the stuff with his alcoholic mother, which you get to see pretty early in the movie. Things like that. When they go away for their Christmas break, you get to see them with their families for that time, and that's where you get to see kind of what helped push them along, what made them who they are, and caused them to deal with issues the way that they're dealing with them. And it's kind of neat that way. It adds a lot more weight to this than to the movie necessarily, and of course the stuff with the attack. There's something similar with what Robbie, when he goes off wandering at one point and he's in New York, and in the city, at one point in the movie, rather, he's just accosted by some guy and ends up stabbing him, and that's what shocks him back to life, back out of Pardieu mode, as it were, and into Robbie mode again. Whereas in the book, he's kind of confused with someone who's trying to do pickups on Times Square, and that's another thing, a very 70s Times Square with porn theaters and prostitutes and all that kind of thing. Talking about stuff that dates the book. While he's in Pardieu mode, he meets someone there who thinks that he's trying to pick up people, and kind of directs him as how to do that, and then he gets into that situation, and the Pardieu personality thinks that it's a succubus trying to assault my purity, and stabs the guy there, and that's how that happens in the book. Whereas, it seems a bit weird in the movie, just some guy comes up to him, and so at least that I'm remembering. I have not reviewed the movie yet. I'm kind of jiving my memories of this. There's another thing in the in the backgrounds that makes things interesting in the book. Daniel, I don't think it really indicates in the movie that he's Jewish. And it gets interesting because when JJ puts together the game in the Forbidden Caverns, and that, there's the scene in the movie where they come up against, they do something with this skeleton that he's got laid out there, and it goes away, and there's this writing on the wall. And in the movie, Daniel says when they're trying to figure out if they can read it, he says, it's written in the ancient runes of my people, and it says, "Eat of the bitter herb." When I first saw that, I'm not Jewish. I didn't know the significance of that, but I did, but it's not something I automatically connected. But I got to see him with his family over Christmas break here, realize, okay, that is in his background. And, JJ finds a Passover Haggadah and gets that particular phrase out of it, and is able to put that in there. That's interesting stuff for a LARP kind of situation, if you know that you've got that to work with. So there's a lot of neat stuff in there. like I said, it did get mistaken by some of the D&D opponents back at the time as investigative journalism, showing how bad Dungeons and Dragons would be for people. And the thing is that I wish I had this stuff with me. It's packed away in a box somewhere because I moved back in April. And I've still got a bunch of old files and stuff packed in boxes. At one point, when I was living in Bowling Green, Kentucky, there was some stuff going on with the LARP there, and I thought I was going to need some help as far as if something went wrong with that. And I got sent a packet of stuff from CARPGA, the Committee for the Advancement of Role-Playing Games. And among the things in there were some excerpts of articles written by, I think Thomas Radecki was one of them. There might have been some stuff from Pat Polling's organization. I don't remember that precisely. But talking about the investigative journalism of mazes and monsters, and they'd found Rona Jaffe, and she had signed things on there like, I have no idea what these people are talking about. This is fiction. She's been a novelist since the 50s. And really, guys? And of course, there's one of at least two things of hers that got made into movies. I think Mazes and Monsters was a TV movie. And earlier, I think her very first book was also a movie. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. It's in her Wikipedia article. You can go and look for that. I'll probably put a link in the show notes on the website or something like that. But this is the only one that, as far as I know, dealt with any kind of gaming stuff that, well, I don't want to say stuff that we would be interested in, because all kinds of us would be interested in all kinds of things that she may have written at various points. You can still find the books in used bookstores and that. I've seen a couple of other titles at half-price books, for example. And if this one turned up in Bowling Green, Kentucky, then who knows where you can find a copy of this thing. So it's an interesting read if you can find a copy of it. And that's Mazes and Monsters. That's the Those Crazy Games Book Club. I don't know when I'll do another one of these. It may make up a main episode slot. It may be a vlog slot. I really don't know. I'm going to put it in as, well, probably a book club listing rather than, say, a review or a vlog, because it's not really either one. It's more structured like a vlog, and it's not a review like I'm ripping into it. Because it doesn't really need to be ripped into as such, unless you're really, really anti-gaming people who are looking at it that way. But anyway, enough of that. Hope everybody's having a good couple of weeks, and I should, good Lord willing, and the river don't rise and work doesn't decide to interfere again, I should have some review content next time around. And in the meantime, this has been Those Crazy Games, the premiere of the Those Crazy Games Book Club. Keep rolling crits, everyone.